This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
Hello and welcome to History for Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie.
And each week, we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird. We are back from our break, weirdos.
Oh my God, I am actually so happy to be back.
Yeah, we took the month of June off. Some of you may have noticed we shared some remastered episodes with a little bit of commentary from Andrew and I in the month of June. And now July is going to be the month of unsolved historical mysteries.
Oh yes, and we are starting off this month with a banger of an episode.
I think you're a little bit biased in that assessment because you picked it.
I picked it and I researched it and wrote it.
Yep.
But I'm really excited to tell this story.
Yeah, and just for folks to know, we picked this theme because we actually didn't pick it. It was our patrons that picked the theme.
That's true.
So if you're interested in picking future themes or having kind of like priority for episode suggestions, you can join our Patreon. You'll see the link in the description box.
Exactly. And that's the best way to reach us about potential future episodes.
Exactly. And before Andrew regales us with this mystery, I did also want to share a happy announcement. We have some team members, you guys. I wish we could add like cheers sound, like yay in the background, because we are so excited for our team members.
Oh my God. I'm so happy to have these folks joining us
and supporting us. Yes,
because we really needed the help.
Yeah, we really did.
I especially needed the help.
We have 3 folks helping us out moving forward. We have Sam. He was my virtual assistant for my private practice. He still is. And I loved his brain so much that I was like, please help us with the podcast.
Right.
So you may interact with Sam sometimes. And then we have Tatiana, and she is currently editing this episode probably as she listens to us talk about her.
I know, it's trippy.
Yeah, but she is our new editor. You guys, we're going to have like professional, real editing.
Yes, instead of just me hacking away at it.
Andrew has been doing everything on his own all of these years. So I think
all of these years, that's absolutely correct.
Yeah, you've been doing it all. All I do is I write my episode.
You're the talent. You just show up and you're like, boom, I'm here. Let's go.
That's how I like to do it. You know, what can I say? But you may notice the editing improves.
Yeah.
I dare say. Because of Tatiana. So thank you, Tatiana. And then we have a research assistant. I'm super excited about that.
Yeah.
A lot of the time to prep episodes does come into the research component. Just like compiling the different sources can take a lot of time, and we enjoy doing it, but we want to be more efficient with like our recording schedule.
Exactly.
So we have Felicia. Yay! Thank you, Felicia.
You 3, thank you so much for your help already. It hasn't even officially started, and we're so excited. And fun fact, I mentioned that we connected with Sam because he was helping me with my private practice. We connected with Tatiana and Felicia because they're weirdos. I know. So that was like an extra added bonus hiring them onto the pod because of that reason alone. We love working with the weirdos.
Feels so good. And of course, as always, we want to thank all the weirdos because you all listening, sharing the podcast, leaving reviews, things like that gets us to this point where now, how many years in?
This is our 4th year.
4 years in, we can have some support in creating the show and making the show better for you. So thank you. Thank you, weirdos.
Thank you, guys. I mean, From the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, enough with the sappy stuff. Tell us, babe, what are you going to share with us today?
So like I said at the beginning, I'm starting off with an absolute banger of an episode, but I am a little bit biased because we are going over one of my favorite historical figures of all time, Alexander the Great. But specifically, where the heck is his tomb?
That's the mystery part.
That's the mystery. Where is his mummy? Where is his tomb? So to start off, we actually know where his father was buried. His father was actually cremated. So we have the box of where his ashes are.
That's so wild.
We know exactly where his tomb was, or is, I should say. We even have like his breastplate. We have a lot of stuff from Philip II, Alexander's father's tomb.
Okay. But he wasn't nearly as big a deal. Right. As Alexander.
So in terms of the kingdom of Macedon, he was an incredibly big deal for his time. And then Alexander came and just completely Philip was like an afterthought after that. But without Philip, Alexander would not have been as successful as he was. Okay, so let's just get right into Alexander though. So he was born July 20th, maybe July 21st, 356 BC in the Kingdom of Macedonia, or Macedon sometimes as it's called. And until Philip II, it was a complete backwater of Greece.
Okay.
It was just very tribal, very herdsman-like. There weren't cities. Like the rest of Greece was organized into polises or poli. I actually don't know the plural of the word, but the singular is polis, which just means city. So like Athens was a polis, Sparta was a polis. Macedonia didn't really have that. It was just like a loose confederation organized into a kingdom.
Okay. And that's where you get the word metropolis, right?
Yes, exactly. So at the age of around 13 years old, Alexander was entrusted to the tutelage of one of the greatest philosophers of all time, actually, Aristotle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. This mentorship instilled in him a very intense lifelong love of learning philosophy and just Greek culture in general. And it also shaped his worldview, because what a lot of people don't know, Aristotle was a little bit xenophobic.
Really?
Yeah, so he was, I shouldn't say xenophobic, he was Greek supremacist.
Yeah.
So that's a little
Which
fun
we
fact.
See a little bit in Alexander's future.
A little bit, yeah, especially at the
take
beginning.
On it.
Yes, definitely. I mean, the whole reason for his campaign at the beginning was to conquer Persia in the name of Greece as retaliation for the earlier conquest of the early 5th century BC. So, and it's interesting, speaking of the Persians, as a young prince, Alexander witnessed firsthand, kind of the power of the Persian the empire, when emissaries from the Persian court actually came to visit his father, Philip II. And these emissaries were just really amused by Alexander. He's like this little kid at this point in time. And he is just asking them a bunch of questions, but not about, the things like kids would normally be fascinated about. No, he's asking about roads, logistics, and just how the empire is organized. And he was basically gathering intel.
Yeah.
And the emissaries, they're talking to a child.
So they tell him everything.
They're telling him everything.
Yeah.
It's actually quite funny. So, and then another story from Alexander's childhood, Bucephalus, the taming of his horse.
Very famous.
It's iconic, but basically there's this wild, gigantic black horse that could not be ridden by anyone. And then Alexander tamed him basically
as a kid
by tricking him with his shadow.
Yeah.
And was able to ride him, which impressed Philip immensely.
And he keeps Bucephalus for the rest of Bucephalus's life, right?
Yes, he takes Bucephalus all across the world, and Bucephalus would end up tragically dying all the way in modern day Pakistan.
Wow.
So kind of literally to the Greeks was the other edge of the world.
Yeah.
And from a young age, Alexander just received insanely rigorous military training, tactics, strategy, and just general leadership from not only his father, but other Macedonian generals.
Because they knew he would take over.
Exactly. It laid the groundwork for his conquests. It's pretty amazing. And speaking of conquest, his first victory, not as a king, he's not a king yet, but he is the commander of the companion cavalry, which is kind of like the elite unit of the Macedonian army. He's 16 years old, and he leads it against the sacred band of Thebes, which we actually covered in a previous episode way back in episode number 27, if you're interested.
I love the sacred band of Thebes, but Alexander beats them?
Oh, yeah, he slaughters them. Oh. Yeah, and they were an elite fighting force themselves.
Yes.
Like, that was, I mean, and not only did he slaughter them, I mean, he just dove head first, almost literally.
At 16.
At 16 years of age. I mean, he was fearless.
What were you doing at 16?
Not that. I was not defeating the sacred band of Thebes. I can guarantee you that. It's like learning how to drive and, I don't know, trying to get straight A's in school.
I was depressed, ditching class, hanging out at 7-Eleven.
Yeah, and you're the one who went to an Ivy League school.
So I feel like we would not have been hanging out at 16.
I don't think so, no.
I also was not defeating the sacred band of Thebes, if that wasn't clear.
That's true. Yeah, I don't think too many people were. So, in 336 BC, this is a pivotal point for Alexander's life. During a celebration in Aige, which is a little city in Greece, King Philip II of Macedon was assassinated by his bodyguard Pausanias.
By his bodyguard?
Yeah, it was his bodyguard.
That's so ironic.
So the reasons behind the assassination, insanely murky.
Okay.
We don't know why he did it. There's a lot of theories around it, ranging from the Persians organized it to even Alexander had a hand in it, which I find very dubious at the best.
Maybe Philip said something really terrible about his mother and the bodyguard just lost it.
It's possible.
But that theory's never been thrown out there.
Caligula was murdered by one of his bodyguards because he kept on making fun of his like high-pitched voice. And then he just snapped one day and stabbed him.
Yeah, you got to be nice to people.
You got to be nice to them.
Just because you're king or emperor doesn't mean you can get away with being mean to people.
Yeah, exactly.
They might stab you.
So regardless of the reasons as to why Philip died, at just 20 years old, Alexander ruthlessly consolidated power and executed potential rivals and was essentially became like the de facto king very early on.
That's wild at 20.
At 20. Not to mention also that like key nobles backed him, and he had a lot of talented friends to rely on, in particular Ptolemy, who's one of his best friends, who would be a very important and pivotal character even after Alexander's death.
Yeah.
So Alexander, he faced rebellions in Thebes, which is a city in Greece, and other Greek city-states, which he just brutally quelled. I mean, he burned Thebes to the ground.
Oh my God, leave Thebes alone.
Yeah, so except for one house. He did leave one house up, which I think was the house of someone that had sheltered Philip II earlier on in his life.
Oh my goodness.
So he left that one house standing, but everywhere else burnt it down.
Oh my.
So, the invasion of Persia is pretty much imminent, and it's not only a personal ambition for Alexander the Great, it's a long-held goal of a lot of the Greeks to get back at the Persian invasions, right? And like 490 was the first one, and then 480 was the second one.
So this would have been an objective that the other polises or poli also would want? Like It's not just for Macedonia?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Especially like Athens was sacked multiple times during that period. So they definitely want retribution. And that was a great propaganda tool too for him. Right? He's like, sure. Guys, it's not just for me, it's all of Greece. And that was a selling point. But it's interesting because after we get to later on in his campaign when he has like kind of a multi-ethnic, multinational army, he kind of like drops that talking point.
I'm like, this is for Greece.
Yeah.
That's smart, I guess.
It's very smart. He literally had like a propagandist with him. He was brutally intelligent.
We've got to get one of those.
I know, right? We have a podcast, you see.
Next team member, a propagandist.
Yeah. Okay, so in 334 BC, Alexander led his armies across the Hellespont, which is like the modern day Dardanelles, and that goes straight into Asia Minor, right? So leaving Europe into Asia Minor, and begins the legendary campaign, one of the most successful military campaigns in not only the ancient world, but in all of human history.
Oh my goodness, that's saying something.
Yeah. And I mean, Alexander just had really amazing early victories against the Persian Empire, 3 pivotal ones. So the first one was the Battle of the Granicus River in 334 BC, then the Battle of Issus the following year in 333 BC, and then finally with the Battle of Gaugamela, that was a decisive victory over the Persian Empire and essentially laid the groundwork for Alexander now to be in control of that empire.
Wow, and that's a big deal.
That's a huge deal. And of course I'm laying broad strokes here, but I'm just laying the groundwork for the mystery, right?
Yes.
So I'm giving you a lot of backstory because he's so important, and I actually had to really hold myself back here. I just want to paint broad strokes. Yeah.
There could be a whole podcast, and I'm sure there are, just on Alexander.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Easily. I mean, I could every single year of his life, like starting I think at the age of 16, you could probably do at least a full episode on.
Oh wow. That'll be your next podcast.
Oh my God, no, that's too much research. So, and Alexander's conquest, it didn't even stop with the Persian Empire, right? Mm-hmm. So he successfully subdued Egypt, which is important. So he successfully subdued Egypt without violence.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, not a single drop of blood was spilled, and he becomes pharaoh of all of Egypt.
Which is another really big deal because he's not Egyptian.
Exactly. He's not Egyptian. I mean, neither were the Persians, but the Egyptian people willingly accepted Alexander.
That's the difference.
That's a huge difference. You're right. So, and it didn't stop there. He pushed eastward all the way to conquering Bactria, which is modern day Afghanistan, Sogdiana, which is parts of Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, and even reaching the Indus River in India. Mm-hmm.
Which is wild for back then.
Yeah. I think the furthest east he reaches, like the Hydaspes, one of those rivers. He not only goes past Pakistan, but into actually like modern day India.
And he wants to keep going.
And he wants to keep going, but his troops are like, we're done.
Yeah.
We're done. Like, it has been over a decade now. We need to go home.
A decade of campaigning.
Exactly.
I'd be exhausted.
I mean, at its peak, Alexander's empire stretched from Greece to Egypt to Afghanistan to India. It was over 2 million square miles.
That's insane to think about.
Exactly.
Something like that existing today would be insane.
Yes. I mean, it would be. I mean, it's bigger than the United States.
Yes.
Or like,
and think of all
Russia
the different...
is bigger, but there's a lot of empty landmass there.
Yeah, that's true. And this, like you said earlier, these are all different cultures. These are different ethnicities. They have different gods. They speak different languages. That's wild. That's
a really good point. And you're right. Like, Rome does this, but it's over the course of many, many, many years. Alexander does this in about a decade. It's wild. I mean, it makes sense that, and we'll talk about this, Romans were obsessed with Alexander. Mm-hmm. So, but with all good things, they must come to an end. Aww. So Alexander's death in June of 323 BC, just a month shy of his 33rd birthday, marked the end of the classical Greek period. Wow. You could say even like at the beginning of his life is the end of classical Greece, but for certain, like with his death. Yeah, exactly. And that ushers in kind of like the new age. Mm-hmm. But before I get to that, allegedly on Alexander's deathbed, his final words were toi kratoroi, and I might be butchering the Greek, guys, but I try my best here. But essentially in English, that means to the strongest, when he was asked what or who should rule his empire after his death. Interestingly, though, one of Alexander's greatest generals was named Craterus. And so there is a theory, I suppose, right, that he really meant to Craterus.
Mm-hmm. But like, you're dying, so you could have been mumbly.
Exactly. He's like sweating. He
had a fever, right?
He had a massive fever. Yeah, his headspace isn't there, so who the hell knows?
Even if he was saying to the strongest, he could have just been delirious.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly was.
And just be like, I don't know, to the strongest.
I mean, he had been sick for days, probably not eating a lot, not drinking a lot of water. They think he got
malaria, right?
Something like that. Either malaria or poison. I do think the malaria is really plausible, because even when Alexander is entering Babylon, which would be for the last time of his life, he wants to make like a grand kind of gesture, and so he enters through the swampy portion, and so it's very, very possible that a mosquito bit him during that time, carrying malaria, ultimately leading to his death.
Mosquitoes suck.
The only animals on Earth that kill more humans than humans do.
That's why I don't go into swamps.
Exactly. So, regardless of what was actually said, though, Alexander's body was laid in a large gold sarcophagus with a large gold casket. So I mentioned the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. So the Hellenistic age is what comes in later. And basically, during Alexander's life, he promoted a Greek culture, right? He really accepted other cultures, but he promoted the Greek one, and especially language, throughout all of his empire. And so Greek-style cities were established all the way into, modern-day Afghanistan, and India and Pakistan. And then also, he encouraged intermarriage, and he sponsored arts and sciences. That was like a big thing of his. All those were really big key components on a cultural level of his conquests.
And by intermarriage, you mean his generals marrying local women of the different places?
Exactly.
That they were conquering?
Right. Like right before his death, there was this mass wedding at Susa, where he had a bunch of his Macedonian Greek generals marrying Persian women to kind of try to kickstart this promotion of like the
combined
intermarriage.
Culture.
Exactly. One larger culture, I guess.
That's really romantic, a mass wedding that you're forced into.
Yeah.
I love it.
Oh my God, that's such a good point.
That's what everyone dreams of.
I know. And I mean, and to his credit, like it's very evident in art, religion, and philosophy from like the 4th to the 1st centuries BC.
Yes, it does work.
Exactly. And part of this Hellenistic age was the fracturing of Alexander's kingdom, right, into multiple competing empires. I mean, these were big empires in their own right.
Yeah.
And so the successors of Alexander, called the Diadochoi, they just which Ptolemy was one, they just fought each other like all the time. Because
they thought he said to the strongest. And
exactly.
Everyone's like, that's me. No, that's me. That's me.
A lot of people were like, no, I want to be the next Alexander. I'm going to reassemble all of these disparate empires into one again. Except for Ptolemy. He was smart. He was just like, I want Egypt. Like, it's super.
That's it.
I want to be pharaoh. I want to have a ton of money. I want that rich history.
Everyone was obsessed with Egypt.
Everyone, yeah. There's riches. There's a bunch of grain being grown
it's very
there.
Fertile.
Very fertile.
The ancient history to them.
Literally, like ancient. 3,000 years of history to them already.
Yes. Very prestigious.
Incredibly prestigious, yes. And then also, part of this too, interestingly, is like new religious cults were created as a part of this Hellenization. And you kind of had this blending of the Greek and Eastern deities into one. And even one of the cults that's created is the cult of Alexander, which we'll be talking about in a little bit.
So he's deified upon his death.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was deified during his life, but...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, but even
as
after
a pharaoh,
his death.
you technically are a living god.
Literally, yes. So, first of all, Alexander created a ton of cities throughout his campaigns.
What did he like to name these cities, I wonder? What would you name them if you were him?
If I were he, I probably would have a little bit of diversity in the names, but he really liked the name Alexandria for reasons unknown to me.
Oh my God.
I'm being facetious.
So narcissistic.
A little bit.
You're Alexandria and you're Alexandria.
Yeah. Kind of like the Oprah, like, you're Alexandria, you're Alexandria,
yeah.
You're Alexandria.
He's just like, my name. That's what they're all gonna have.
I know. He did name a city after Bucephalus.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Do you know?
It's in Pakistan. It's where he's buried, apparently.
Oh my God, I want to go.
I know. I kind of do too, actually.
What a good horse.
So, a lot of these cities still exist, including the one in Egypt that is going to be like a focal point of the remainder of our episode.
You all may have heard of it. It's called Alexandria.
Yes. So, remember I told you about these wars of the Diadohoi? Mm-hmm. Well, all their legitimacy ties back to Alexander.
Yeah.
All of it. So, how do you claim that legitimacy, you think?
You'd have to prove that you were the closest to him.
Right. How could you do that after his death, though? He can't talk.
You get his body.
Damn straight.
They want his body.
They do.
Oh, God. It's so dark.
So his body essentially became a power or a symbol of power and legitimacy, like I said.
Yeah.
And the Diadohoi fought furiously over this.
Over this corpse.
Yeah, over this corpse. And you might be thinking, like, it's kind of weird, which I absolutely get. But from, like, their point of view and from a view of, like, the majority of his subjects, he was, in his life, a living god. Mm-hmm. I mean, they took that literally.
So whoever can possess his remains, that's the most legit of all of them.
Right. And even the Macedonian Greeks, or in the Greeks in general, didn't believe in the living god thing.
No.
But they certainly believed that once he died, he was a god. So at this point, everyone's like,
oh, now he's a god for
death.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. He's a god, 100%. So having the corpse of a god is incredible propaganda.
Yeah.
And the body, so it was supposed to be buried. His body was supposed to be buried in Macedonia.
That's what I would assume.
Yeah, and he wanted it buried in Siwa.
Oh,
in
where
Egypt.
he had the sort of
the revelation.
Yeah, the epiphany thing.
Yeah, where the oracle of Zeus Amon told him that he was the son of Zeus and a god.
Yeah. And he was like, oh my God, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Literally.
Yes.
I know. I really do want to go to Siwa, actually. It's beautiful.
Oh, I want to go so badly.
So
he wanted it in Siwa.
He wanted it in Siwa.
Okay.
It was supposed to go to Macedon. And then Ptolemy, or Ptolemy the First Soter, as history would come to know him as, basically just swooped in and stole the body, taking it back to Egypt instead.
Well, Ptolemy's the smartest of them, right? The most cunning, maybe?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's why they had Anthony Hopkins play him.
Exactly. In the Alexander movie. Mm-hmm. I know. And I think Anthony Hopkins is going to be playing a Roman emperor in that TV show that's coming out soon.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really excited about that. Mm-hmm. They better not mess that up.
I'm sure they will.
Lovely. So yeah, Diodorus Siculus, who's actually, I really like him as like an ancient author. He writes about this, funny enough. So the body, it was taken at first to Memphis, Egypt, where it was probably laid in a sarcophagus that is now in the Museum of London, the London Museum. Yeah. It was originally built for Nectanebo, the last native-born pharaoh of Egypt. Mm-hmm. But Nectanebo actually never made it into that sarcophagus, and we think that Alexander was placed there temporarily.
So they were like, they booted him out of his sarcophagus. They're like, no, this is going to be for Alexander.
Yeah, this is for Alexander.
Don't get in here.
Well, and also it kind of goes to the propaganda of Ptolemy, because he really needed to legitimize himself, right? And he's like, oh yeah, by the way, Alexander, actually the son of Nectanebo. He writes this. Like, it's called the Alexander, the Romances of Alexander or something, or Alexander Romance, something along those lines. It's just all propaganda.
So at this point, Alexander is the son of Zeus and Nectanebo and Philip.
Yes.
All right.
Makes sense, right?
That's all I needed to hear. Go on.
Go off, King. So, and they would stay in Memphis, Egypt. The body would stay in Memphis until Ptolemy dies. And then Ptolemy's son, Ptolemy II, moved the body to Alexandria, where it would remain until at least 390-ish AD for basically 700 years.
That's a really long time. Do we know why Ptolemy II moved it?
Probably to shore up his base of power.
Okay.
Like, they're up in Alexandria.
Yeah.
And it would just make more sense. Like, Memphis is like an ancient, like, Egyptian city, like, to them, to the Greeks, or the Hellenistic folks. Like, it's ancient, like the more modern city is Alexandria.
And it's like the center of knowledge and learning. And
yeah, exactly. It's bougie, but by the time of Ptolemy II, probably not as bougie as you think. It won't get like bougie until a couple of generations after that.
Okay.
But we know that Ptolemy IV... Yes. Ptolemy IV would ultimately build the grand mausoleum for Alexander called the Soma.
Okay.
And his body was placed there around 215 BC.
I can't not giggle at the fact that, like, what are the cities named? Alexandria. What do you think Ptolemy's descendants' names are? Ptolemy. Like, no one's being original here.
Dude, and they're like, oh, who should be my wife? Should be my sister.
It should be my sister, Cleopatra. Or Bernie K.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
Those are your only options.
I know. They're really unoriginal. It's very frustrating.
Ptolemy IV's wife name was Cleopatra.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ptolemy IV, Philopator.
Father lover, yes.
Yes.
It's not what it sounds like.
Yeah, not in this context. So, the Soma would kind of also be used to house the bodies of deceased Ptolemaic rulers as well. So, again, very good propaganda for them.
Yes.
And this tomb was massive. We'll post pictures of it on our Instagram, but it was huge and it was like really pretty.
Because it would be the tomb of a god. Yeah.
Right. And when I say post pictures, we're going to post pictures of what it would have looked like according to artist renderings.
You don't have Polaroids?
I don't. If I could go back in time and take Polaroids, I absolutely would.
I believe it.
That would probably save a lot of headache for our archaeologist friends.
But we'll post the artist renderings.
Exactly. So the tomb also served as the cult center for the cult of Alexander.
Nice.
Yay. And that cult would last well into the Roman era.
That's so crazy.
And supposedly it was like right at the heart of the city, kind of right at the crossroads between the city's main like north, south, and east, west roads. And what was known as what we now know as the Palace District.
Okay.
That's what we call it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And it was apparently just an incredible sight to see. But despite it being so important in the Hellenistic and Roman eras, it's just lost to history now. Just gone.
That is so wild to me.
I know, right?
How do you lose Alexander's body?
And the tomb, this massive tomb.
The whole, what? Who's in charge here? What's going on? A Ptolemy?
Yeah, a Ptolemy, of course. What's amazing is if you play the video game Assassin's Creed Origins, I believe, you can go and see the tomb.
Wow. I am going to go do that right after this.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
She's being facetious, guys. She's not going to do that. But you know what? It's lost to history for now.
Yeah, for now.
For now. I would love to see it come out in my lifetime or be discovered. But, I have some theories and we'll get into that in just a moment here. So, the mummy of Alexander was just like an utter fascination to many rulers and common folk alike, right? That fascination would last all throughout the all of age of Hellenization. And Romans, even later on, would often make the pilgrimage to see Alexander's mummy over the course of centuries.
Wow. That's the impact that he had on the world, because then Rome becomes like the big baddie.
They do become the big baddie.
And then for people to make the pilgrimage to see his body, that's wild.
Yeah, he was so important for all of them. I mean, in fact, I think the most famous depiction of Alexander, arguably, is a mosaic that's found in Pompeii. And that's, of course, Roman.
Yeah. That makes sense, Rome in particular, I actually just thought about this. Rome, what did Rome love? War. Yeah.
They love they love a good conquest.
So I could see why he was so important to them.
And speaking of Romans, the greatest Roman of all, Julius Caesar, would even visit the tomb in 48 BC.
Wow.
Yeah, so almost 300 years after
That's
Alexander's
so crazy.
death.
I love when you see how separated these figures are by time, because I think the way we're taught, at least in the United States, I feel like that's not emphasized.
Yeah.
That there's like a 300-year difference that feels almost like time collapses and they're like, oh yeah, 50 years apart. I don't know.
Yeah, you're like, oh, they're like barely removed. No, they're centuries removed.
Yeah, it's all ancient, it's the same thing, but it's so different.
I mean, we're definitely closer in time to George Washington than they were to each other.
Think about that, guys.
Yeah.
Think about it.
That often messes with my head. Mm-hmm. And, for me personally, I actually, I've thought about that meeting, I guess. I mean, Alexander's dead. But, I wondered what, Caesar would have felt seeing him like that. Especially at this point in Julius Caesar's life, he's already fairly accomplished. Mm-hmm. He's already won the civil war against Pompey. And so... or almost won it. There's still some stragglers, but Pompey's defeated, and I can't imagine what's going through his mind at that point in time.
Didn't and gosh, I hope I'm not wrong because it's going to be embarrassing. Isn't Parallel Lives written about both of them?
Yeah, so Parallel Lives. There's a lot of different chapters.
Oh, okay.
That compare a Greek and a Roman together, and the Plutarch, that's the author. Mm-hmm. He compares Julius Caesar and Alexander together. Yeah. Which is a huge honor for Caesar.
Yeah.
Because Plutarch's writing maybe a generation or two later.
Okay.
After Caesar. So Augustus, even also, speaking of emperors, would visit a couple of decades later. Mm-hmm. And when he's done actually paying his respects to Alexander, he was asked if he wanted to see the mummies of the Ptolemies as well. To which he replied, "I came to see a king, not a row of corpses."
Oh, damn, Augustus.
But he could have just been mad because this must have been right after he accidentally broke off Alexander's nose when he was visiting the tomb, paying his respects. Because he placed a diadem on Alexander's head and I think had a wreath or something there. And
that is so embarrassing.
This is a much later source that wrote about it, so you got to take it with a grain of salt, but I really hope that it did happen.
I really hope so, because that's so funny.
It's hilarious.
That would absolutely happen to me.
Yeah, and that was on accident, but...
Of course, yeah, you're trying to pay your respects, but you broke the man's nose.
And Augustus would not have done that on purpose. Mm-hmm. So, not all folks, though, who visited the tomb had good intentions. In fact... many of them didn't have the greatest. So over the course of centuries, certain items would be stripped from the tomb and even from Alexander's body, this time on purpose.
That's disgusting.
Unlike the nose. So starting the late 2nd century BC, when Ptolemaic rule began to kind of weaken over Egypt, rulers would start to strip gold from the mausoleum to pay for their wars. Mm-hmm. And in around 90 BC, the gold sarcophagus was even melted down for the raw material gold and was replaced with a glass one instead.
I feel like you just look so tacky.
Yeah.
Doing that.
And you know who also did something tacky?
Who?
Cleopatra herself even took gold from the tomb to pay for her and Mark Antony's war against Octavian, Augustus.
That's tacky, you guys.
Yeah. So during the 1st century, before I even get on to that too, anything related to Alexander was so sought after that people would go to great lengths to get it. So Alexander was not buried with his cape. It was kind of floating out there. Mm-hmm. Pompey Magnus, he went during the 1st century BC, scoured the Eastern Mediterranean to find the cloak, and he eventually does, and he wears it so he could cosplay as Alexander.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, that cloak must have been it was centuries old,
so it would have been tattered or moldy.
You would think. Yeah,
this anything related to him sounds like how Christians sought the cup.
Like the Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail.
Kind of like the relics that like the Catholic Church has today in a way.
Yes. The crown of thorns, the shroud, all of those things. Anything that you can claim Jesus touched is just like that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And speaking of the Catholic Church, we're actually going to talk about them later on in this episode. They come into play, possibly.
Do they mess some stuff up?
No, actually, they don't.
Oh.
No, they come in clutch this time.
Oh, nice change of pace.
Yes.
Good job, guys.
So, I know. And guys, Stephanie is Catholic, by the way. Someone wrote in saying like, you guys hate Catholics. I'm like, guys, Stephanie is literally Catholic. We got married in a Catholic church. Like, just because we have like criticisms doesn't mean we hate something.
Yeah. I am not Catholic.
You are.
I think
it's the most Catholic thing to say that you're not Catholic.
This is so confusing. But yes, no. I have a lot of cultural respect for the religion because I'm Irish and Mexican, guys. Wow, my family's been Catholic for a long time.
Yeah.
But the institution is where I have my criticisms, which I think anyone with a heart would have criticisms.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can do better.
Exactly. So, going back to Alexander and his corpse, people are just taking stuff, right? I mean, it gets really egregious with some of the Roman emperors. So the first one being Caligula, of course.
Ew.
I know, Caligula is just so cringe.
He's so gross.
So mid 1st century AD, Caligula stole Alexander's breastplate.
What a loser.
Yeah. And the reason why is actually kind of funny, though.
Okay.
So he wanted to wear it while riding his favorite horse across a 2-mile pontoon bridge in the Bay of Naples.
That's it?
Yeah, I can't even make this up if I tried.
I don't like Caligula.
He's such a dunce.
He really is.
Or he was. I mean, he's dead. But yeah, this was also the same horse that, like, according to legend, he tried to make consul.
Oh, yeah. It's the same one?
Yeah, I'm going to butcher this. Incutatus.
We think that's probably not true, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's true.
It's like anti-Caligula propaganda.
Yeah, like he doesn't need the propaganda because he was terrible, but I don't think that's true.
And I'm so sorry if you don't know this because this is a really specific question, with things like the breastplate or the cape that Roman emperors were later taking, are those items in museums? Do people know where those items are, or have they all been lost to time?
No, they're lost. They're long gone.
That's so stupid. I knew that would happen. That's why they shouldn't be taking things.
I know. We can also assume that there was a lot of looting because in the year 199 AD, the Roman Emperor Septimius Severus actually closed the tomb. Yeah.
Wow. That's how bad it got.
Yeah, so...
Where he's like, no, you guys can't even look at it anymore.
Exactly. That's at least my understanding of it. I can't think of another reason why he would do that, but...
No, you're right.
But that doesn't last long because only 16 years later, his son Caracalla looted a few items from the tomb as well.
So interesting. I just don't like, particularly for a figure that's deified, I feel like it's just so disrespectful. I'm surprised that they aren't, that they must not see it as bad as we do to like take from someone's grave, essentially.
That's a really good point. And you're right. I mean, it should have been, though.
And they're super superstitious.
They're very superstitious. I think it's not only like, I don't think it's not like they didn't respect it. I think they did revere it. It's just that the opportunity of taking something was greater than the respect they had.
That's a really good way of looking at it, yeah.
Because if you think of Julius Caesar and Augustus, they were very... they're a lot more mature, I guess, to say, than these other emperors.
Yeah.
And they... of course, Augustus accidentally broke off the nose, allegedly. But that was, on accident. And two, like, they were both really paying their respects.
So do you think these other emperors have more also a sense of entitlement?
Probably. Yeah, I could see that.
Okay.
So Caracalla, though, to be fair to him, he supposedly deposited his own tunic, ring, and belt and left it for Alexander as like homage, I guess.
I feel like
that's definitely a little bit of a guilty conscience.
Yeah. I feel like that's a sign that he knew this is not super nice.
Yeah, exactly. And he's actually the last confirmed person to have actually gone into the tomb and seen Alexander with his own eyes. Yeah.
All the way back to Caracalla. That's how long?
That's how long. And it's really strange because it essentially drops from the historical record, like shortly after that, only very sparse mentions of Alexander in his tomb up until 390, where the Roman historian Libianus was the last person to write about it.
Okay.
And to be fair, he only mentions that Alexandria is the city where Alexander's corpse is displayed. He kind of writes that in a way that's more of like a random descriptor than an actual like, hey, yeah, I saw Alexander with my own eyes. So it very well could have been before this that
that's
really
no guarantee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And from here on out, there aren't any other mention of Alexander's tomb or mummy.
That is wild.
There's a few much centuries later, people write, I think this is where Alexander was, but it's like, it's like medieval historians who were, calling them historians is very generous. They're just kind of they're guessing. You're guessing. Because we know that in 400 AD, John Chrysostom, I butchered that. He has a very difficult last name. But Johnny Boy here, he visited Alexandria and he hoped to see the famous tomb, but the location was lost. He even writes down that he couldn't find it and none of the locals know where it is. It's just gone.
Oh my God. 400 AD.
400 AD.
It's for sure lost by then.
Yes.
This is crazy.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. So, it's just strange to me because it had presumably lasted, 10, or it had existed 10 years prior.
Yeah.
Right? Though this could be a misinterpretation of what Libianus was actually trying to say.
Yeah, because it would make more sense if it had been lost at least a generation prior. If this guy, John,
boy.
if he's asking around, everyone's like, I don't know, I've never seen that thing.
Exactly.
You would think that because maybe the last time people knew about it, the adults at this point were children or too young.
Exactly.
That's my guess. Where is John
Chrysostom.
Where's he from?
I actually don't know.
Okay. Because I also think it's interesting that he didn't know it was lost.
Yes.
That people at this point still thought you could go visit it.
Yeah, I just think information just didn't flow as well.
Of course, it traveled so much slower.
Exactly.
But I wonder how close to Alexandria he was from or how far away he was.
Right.
That would kind of tell us how long.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I don't know.
Information would take to travel.
I know if we had our an assistant right here, we'd be like, okay, look that up. On Joe Rogan or whatever,
Pericles.
Look that up.
Look that up.
He's worthless. But yeah, the guy presumably didn't even fact check. He was just Libianus was he was the guy that said that's Alexander where the corpse is displayed. He probably was just winging it.
It's hearsay.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's I've heard that's where it is.
Exactly. That's what I think happened. So regardless though, the tomb of Alexander and his body were missing by 480, right?
Yeah.
Though perhaps and probably even earlier.
Yeah.
So interestingly though, we know that a tsunami actually hit Alexandria on July 21st, 365, which had a devastating effect on the city.
Oh shit.
So the tomb could have been irreparably damaged then or even perhaps earlier, right? We don't know. Another explanation could have been with the rise of Christianity, the old pagan beliefs and culture generally started to go into decline.
Yes.
And with Emperor Theodosius declaring Christianity the state religion, at the end of the 4th century, so around 390, actually, it is very possible that Alexander's tomb could have been either looted at that time or just the neglected tomb could have fallen into disrepair.
Because it's like, oh, it's like a pagan temple.
Exactly. It's just like, yeah, it's a pagan temple. Like, who gives a shit? You know, excuse my French.
Yeah.
But we'll probably likely never know the reason as to why, right? It's just that we know by 400 AD, Alexander's tomb and mummy are gone. So we get to the point of the story here where we ask ourselves the question, where the hell is Alexander the Great's tomb? And more importantly, where is his mummy? And there's a theory. Well, my personal favorite theory is coming up, but I'm gonna kind of go broad to narrow here.
Okay.
So the answer to this could be different, right? Depending on which question you're actually answering. So
tomb versus mummy.
Exactly. And there are theories. So in regards to the tomb, the most probable location is that it is just simply buried underneath the modern city of Alexandria.
Yeah.
It's the most plausible suggestion. In fact, archaeologist Calliope Limnos Papacosta, she has been excavating the city for almost 3 decades by this point. And if her name sounds familiar to you, it's because she's featured in the Netflix documentary on Alexander the Great.
Yes.
And in actually one of the latest Expedition Unknown episodes.
Yes, she's really cool. I got to see her in both of those with you.
Right.
She has really dedicated her life's work to finding this tomb.
Yeah.
I really hope she finds it.
I hope so too. I mean, she's done a lot of really incredible excavation work, and it's kind of wild to see from her point of view in the excavation where they're digging, the ground or the bottom level is where the first iteration of the city was. So like they found the road, the original road,
which is so cool. Absolutely
wild. That the road still exists, first of all, because in California, that road 25 years from now is completely gone. So, but what's crazy is that it's like 30 feet below like the modern day street level.
Yeah, it's really deep in there.
It really is.
Also, wild guess with a name like Calliope. She's Greek.
Yes, she is. I love how you didn't even attempt the last name.
Nope. I was like, you know what I'm trying to say here?
I'm not going to say it again because I think I butchered it the first time, but I don't care.
That's really cool to have a Greek person find it. Would be really interesting. Like,
that would be.
Very full circle moment.
That would be so poetic, honestly.
Yeah.
So this particular excavation that she's doing is in the midst of the palace district that I had mentioned earlier, right? Mm-hmm. And it is here that they did find the foundations of an absolutely massive structure, but unfortunately only the southern portion of this is dug up. And so a majority of the foundation is actually like underneath a road, which can't be dug up, and actually under a modern like tall building, like a skyscraper.
Knock it down.
So the coordinates of where Alexander the Great's tomb might be is 31 degrees, 12 minutes, 13 seconds north, and 29 degrees, 54 minutes, and 42 seconds east. That's a guess right there.
Oh, yeah.
So if you guys want to just like do a Google Maps view, make sure to like kind of replay that and just get the coordinates down.
Since there's a road and an annoying skyscraper in the way, is there any way for them to find out what that structure is?
It's funny. They did have tunnels. Like they found ancient tunnels.
Oh, ancient tunnels.
Yeah, literally ancient tunnels. Yeah, that they could kind of traverse, and they get like an understanding of, okay, like this is kind of where the building would have been. And so like, and part of that is underneath the street, but yeah, it's kind of
they can only do so much.
They can only do so much, exactly.
Oh, that's frustrating.
They're kind of SOL. Mm-hmm. So another possibility is that the portion of the palace district where Alexander's tomb is actually now underwater. So
that makes sense too.
Yeah, a decent I guess area of the old palace district is underneath the rolling waves of the Mediterranean.
Wow.
Yes, and very well Alexander's tomb could be amongst those particular ruins.
Do people go to look at those? Like, are there archaeologists that have gone to scuba dive those ruins?
Yeah. Yeah, and you could scuba dive and see like just massive building blocks down there. And even, this is much later, but you could see the ruins of the lighthouse of Alexandria even.
That is crazy.
Yeah, one of the ancient wonders of the world.
Would you want to scuba dive there someday?
Oh, 100%.
Good to know.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to scuba dive there at some point in my life. I still have my certification though, even though I haven't scuba dove in like, oh God, it's close to 20 years now.
You may want to brush up on the certification
I'm going to brush up a bit, yeah. I'm more of a surfer now, I think. But all of this what I'm going over only solves one of those questions, right? It's the tomb. But what about the body? What about the mummy of Alexander? And this is where it gets kind of interesting. So earlier I alluded that the 4th century BC was very transformative for the Roman Empire, right? At least from a cultural perspective, Christianity at the beginning of the century is on the rise. By the end of the century, it is the de jure language. It is the de jure religion, thank you, of the entire Roman Empire.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal. And so as Christianity not only became legalized, but then also like kind of enforced, there was a consequence to this. And basically, pagan religious sites at best were kind of left alone to kind of rot away into obscurity. But as we get later on into the century, there's violence that erupts. And part of that is like looting and destruction of pagan temples.
That's not chill.
And it is very possible that his tomb and body were just simply destroyed during one of these uprisings during the mid, to late 4th century BC.
Yeah, that's a big name.
I'm sorry, AD, my bad.
That's a big name pagan, right?
Exactly.
To destroy the tomb of, to be like, yeah, screw you, to paganism, I guess.
Exactly.
I don't see how that is very Christian of you, but sure.
Yeah, it's not very Christian.
Do what you got to do, I guess.
There's also a distinct possibility that Alexander's mummy could have been relocated somewhere, right? More secure, either in anticipation of these rites or because of something else altogether. And here's where we kind of get into a little bit of a twist. So in the late 4th century AD, these sources, I guess now they're still considered ancient, but ancient sources began to reference a tomb of Saint Mark in Alexandria.
Okay.
So this is Mark as in like the gospel.
Yeah. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John.
Exactly. So in fact, the first mention of Saint Mark comes from Saint Jerome in 392 AD.
Okay.
The timing of this is incredibly suspect, to say the least, especially considering that St. Mark was killed over 300 years prior, and no mention of his body existed before the end of the 4th century AD.
What? So all of a sudden,
there's like, oh yeah, by the way, there's this other guy, St. Mark, right around the time that Alexander's tomb disappears.
Yeah, his body's here now.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's very possible that Alexander could have been sort of given a rebranding 700 years after his death.
That did happen too.
Yeah.
With the church in a lot of different cultures, like Saint Bridget, the Irish saint, was a person, I think, but was also deified in the Celtic faith.
Yeah.
So they could have done that with Alexander.
Yeah. And if this was the case, right, it would be really ironic because, to give a little backstory, by the late 7th century AD, so we're going past the fall of the Western Roman Empire, Arab forces had conquered a lot of North Africa, including Alexandria, and tensions started to rise in the kind of like the subsequent century between Muslims and Christians in the region. And in 828 AD,
oh my goodness,
2 Venetian merchant ship captains made a deal with local Christian authorities to take the supposed body of Saint Mark to safety.
Okay.
They removed the corpse from his tomb, laid it in a wagon covered with pork. which is absolutely disgusting,
to
forestall like any close inspection of the contents, and successfully smuggled it aboard their ship bound for Venice.
I hope nobody ate that pork.
God, I hope so, but they definitely did. So there was a small church that was originally housed the remains of, quote unquote, Saint Mark. But the remains were moved to the Basilica di San Marco on October 8th, 1094, and they were interred in the crypt underneath the church. And they would be there for a little over 700 years until 1811 because of flooding, and the body was interred instead in the high altar on the main floor where it still sits to this day.
Have they done carbon dating on the remains?
No, but we'll get to that. So, is this the body of Alexander or is it Saint Mark? Well, there is some evidence that the body that was interred at the basilica was actually mummified, which was not a common practice amongst first century Christians.
No, not at all.
So Martino da Canale in 1275 related that, quote, if all the spices of the world had been gathered together in Alexandria, they could not have so perfumed the city, end quote, when he was describing the body or the corpse of Saint Mark.
Oh.
So it still smelled like a lot of spices and
they use a lot of like frankincense and things like that in the mummification process.
And in his case, honey as well. So when the body was moved in 1811, Leonardo Conte-Manin, he documented the event and even noted that the skeleton kind of stuck to the cloth it was wrapped around in a lot of the areas of the body, which is consistent with a decomposing mummy. Mm-hmm. A large piece of carved limestone, also a broken portion of the larger original, was found only a few meters from the site of Mark's original tomb in the crypt of the basilica. So the block now on display at the cloister of St. Apollonia in Venice depicts a relief of shield, greaves, sword, and a portion of a spear. And these armaments are consistent with Macedonian styles, a fact independently asserted in a study by archaeologist Eugenio Polito in 1998.
That's crazy.
And he described it as, quote, an unattributed fragment relating to a funerary monument with analogous motifs is today conserved in Venice, but definitely derives from the Hellenistic world. It features a Macedonian shield with a star motif at its center, a pair of greaves, and a sarissa, and on the smallest side of the remains of a sword. The block must have belonged to a large monument that may generically be placed between the 3rd and the beginning of the 2nd century BC, end quote.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And the star, remember, that matches the Vergina star, or the Vergina star, which is the symbol of Alexander's house.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
It sounds like that relief definitely has something to do with Alexander.
I definitely think so. So we do have a decent possibility, right? I'm not saying for sure, but a decent possibility that the body of Saint Mark is actually that of Alexander the Great. And that you can go and
potentially see.
Yeah, you can't really see it because it's like interred. It's covered.
Oh, but is it in the...
But you could go to the altar.
The altar, yeah. That's what Catholics do with bodies of saints.
Definitely very pagan.
Yeah. Finger bones, skulls, things like that. They go into the altar to sanctify it.
I know. I really wish there could be further analysis done, right? We could have analysis done, but unfortunately the church is not amenable, as the body would undoubtedly be damaged, it's already ancient, so it would be very difficult to do because it's also decomposed. But I think they're like, we just don't want the possibility of this. It turns out to not be Saint Mark.
You said they were coming in clutch.
Well, they came in clutch that they like preserved it.
You lied to me.
Well, that is kind of clutch.
But they're like, no, because that may threaten what we've decided this is.
So that's not clutch. They could have been chiller about that.
Oh my God, if I was Pope, I'd be like, you guys have to look and see if this is Alexander.
Well, you should petition Francis and see what he says.
Papa Francisco, yeah. That's your best bet right there.
And speaking of Francis, there is even conspiracy theories that the church has his body or his mummy like in their archives. I just wrote that as kind of like a fun fact because it's funny, but I don't think
that's missing. People think it's in the Vatican archives. Yeah.
I mean,
but some of those have to be correct, right?
I kind of want to be president of the United States and just like strong arm them to like let me go in there. I'm like, you have to let me just stay in there for like weeks.
I don't think that's how it works. I don't think that's how being president works.
I feel like you could just do whatever you want.
No. Okay, so you just lost a bunch of votes.
I know. I'd be like, guys, I'm not even like... Actually, I think I would be a pretty decent president. I'd never want to do it, though. I'm already losing hair. I don't need to lose more.
The presidency will age you.
Yeah, oh my God.
But I don't think the point is that you get to do whatever you want in the whole world.
Well, okay, I want to do whatever I wanted. That's just the one thing I really want to do is like...
Yeah.
I'd go to the Pope, be like, look, I'm the president. You're gonna let me in.
I don't think that would really intimidate the Pope. Funny enough.
Yeah, maybe not. He'd be like, beepity bobbity boo.
Did you see that a bunch of comedians from all over the world went to go meet the Pope?
No,
because the Pope wants like to promote humor. He's like, wait, we should like. Our brand should be like more approachable. So like get a bunch of comedians here to hang out with me.
Oh my God.
I'm not
Was Dave Chappelle one of them? Please tell me.
Could you imagine?
I can't even imagine Dave Chappelle and the Pope in the same room.
Imagine
Dave Chappelle, like Bill Burr and the Pope.
Hanging out.
Oh my God, that would be...
Eating pizza.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I can't even. That would be...
Incredible.
That would be so incredible.
Okay, we got really off topic there.
Throwing Andrew Schultz in there. He's like, he's Jewish, but he's like, I just want to be here. This is cool.
Yeah.
I could see him saying some funny shit. Okay, anyways, we're not here to talk about comedians. We're here to talk about Alexander the Great and his body specifically.
Yeah, his great body.
His great body. Oh my God. So, Weirdos, we're at the end here. What do you think? Write in the comments where you think the body of Alexander the Great is, where the tomb is. I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, 2 different guesses, tomb and body. Or you could say, I think they're still together.
Right.
You could guess that. You're probably wrong. But you could guess that too. You can let us know in the comments on Instagram or the comments on Spotify for this episode. I'm really interested to hear what people think.
Yeah.
Or if people have other theories.
Yeah. What's your theory?
I really could see the St. Mark thing happening.
I think it's Alexander.
Yeah, I really could see that. That's definitely on brand.
Part of me just really wants it to be Alexander though, so I'm a little bit biased, I think. But I do genuinely believe that it very well could be.
If it's not St. Mark is actually Alexander, then unfortunately I bet his remains were just destroyed underwater. With his tomb.
Probably. I mean, the most likely scenario is that they were destroyed somehow, the tomb and the body.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to be the case, but that's the most likely. Mm-hmm. But in my heart of hearts, he's in Venice.
If I could pick the outcome of this, it would be that St. Mark is actually Alexander rebranded. And Calliope gets to knock down that skyscraper and she finds the tomb.
I know. I really want her to. It's kind of ugly.
It is. It's not as cool as finding ancient remains, ruins. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Alexandria should know that.
Come on, Alexandria. Be better, man.
Yeah. So that's how I would want this to end.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Well, before I forget, let me relay the sources here. We have Live Science. I actually had 2 articles from them. Really interesting. Nat Geo, because of course. TheCollector.org. History Hit. Newsweek. And of course, our favorite, Wikipedia.
This was a really good episode, my love. I was enthralled.
I had to pull together like a lot of sources and kind of like paint this picture because there were things that were being said that weren't being said in other sources. You know how it is, guys. You know how it is with these things. And, I had to like kind of dive deep. Like Wikipedia is saying one thing. I'm like, is that real? And then I had to like go like fact check that basically. So, but I think I really do think the Saint Mark is actually Alexander the Great.
I think so too.
Yeah, don't at me, guys. That's my like kind of pie in the sky.
Yeah, I hope so. I really loved the episode. Thank you so much for taking us on this journey.
Of course.
This was like a fun adventure.
Like, who done it?
Yeah. These mysteries are going to be really fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited for yours next week.
Yeah.
Should we give them a teaser?
No.
No? Okay, you guys don't get a teaser.
Yeah. There's no way to tease it without making it obvious.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point.
It's a well-known one. I guess that's the teaser.
That's the teaser.
It's a well-known mystery.
And it's not ancient. It's more modern.
Yeah.
20th century even.
There you go. Now you know. Now you know.
Now you know. Okay.
But thank you so much, Weirdos, again, for listening to the show. Please do not forget to share this episode with someone that you think might enjoy it, because that helps the podcast grow.
Yes.
You can always follow us on Instagram at History for Weirdos. That's where we share like personal updates, pictures from the episode, pictures of us, sometimes pictures of our puppy Pericles. So definitely hang out with us on Instagram.
Definitely do. And also, if you're interested in learning a little bit more and getting behind the scenes looks, definitely join us on Patreon as well.
Yeah, you will find the link to that in the show notes. So until next time, Weirdos.
Until next time, adios.
Mm-hmm.